The French-Algerian author Albert Camus said, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer." Yesterday we began the season of Lent and its accompanying thoughts of reflection, repentance, and most definitely the need for refreshment. Today's Thiel Forum provides the perfect antidote to the rigors of Lent by giving us some ways by which we can not only survive but actually appreciate and manage the depth of winter. Our first presenter today is Professor Andy Grover, Chair and Professor of Math and Computer Science. Today he will provide an overview of his experiences during his fall 2013 sabbatical leave in the Mojave National Preserve, where he navigated to and from archaeological sites. He will also address the many ways that the Park Service relies upon specialists to act responsibly across disciplinary boundaries. Professor Grover will discuss his experiences with the NPS personnel with regard to such issues as maintenance, desert biology, hydrology, interpretation, and law enforcement. We appreciate Professor Grover's 34 years of service to Thiel and look forward to learning about his work in the desert as we maneuver through the ice and snow of a Pennsylvania winter. I'm proud to present my colleague, Professor Grover.
First of all, contrary to popular belief, just because it's a desert doesn't mean it's always hot. I can assure you that one of the slides that I had for brevity shows all of the nice snow-capped mountains in the Mojave Preserve. But I was using GIS in the Mojave Desert as a way of facilitating a number of different folks in there. But as I go ahead, I first want to offer my thanks to the Executive Committee and Administration for supporting this project. It certainly enriched my life and it enriched my sense of my discipline as well as being able to outreach across the disciplines. So I have over here a couple people from Mojave National Preserve. You notice we have this thing here called a VIP. What we have in the park system is something called a volunteer in parks. It's a continual ongoing program, so if you have nothing to do over the summer, or for that matter, the winter, you are certainly welcome to apply to the Park Service and the Department of the Interior and offer your services to them. And, you know, I know it's volunteer, so I really didn't get paid, but I did get a $5 a day allowance for food and a dorm room. And I certainly wish to thank park archaeologist David Nichols, whose expertise on the Frontier West and for the Native American populations that came before really is the love of his life. He actually lives within the desert on a permanent basis. And lastly, we have a list here. We also want to thank the National Park Service and Bureau of Land Management. Two sides of the Department of the Interior, but they do get fires in the desert. And in fact, a lot of the area that I'm looking at, you'll see that it looks pretty well blasted because there was a major hackberry fire back in about 2004. So when I say multidisciplinary experience, of course, geographic information systems, geography, certainly information systems, especially databases, are used in this experience. My primary job was to provide GISA to the workers in the archaeological branches. And of course, my secondary asset was they need my help in other ways as well. And I was learning much about them. And so when I say multidisciplinary, he certainly did work with law enforcement, because when we're out in the field, we frequently find that some of the visitors aren't behaving the way they're supposed to. And that's why we have law enforcement in the park system, but it means we have to help out in identifying those hazardous situations. And because there are indigenous species there, and primarily the ones that are concerned were the desert tortoise, which is an endangered species, and the bighorn sheep, which had this nasty pneumonia-like disease going through the population at the time I was there, they really wanted us to be out on the lookout for the tortoises and identify where the populations, and of course, having GPS, I could do that pretty easily. I could report where they were. And certainly we were there to help out all the areas, such as environmental. We had a cleanup day where we cleaned up a newly acquired piece of the park. And I also needed to understand, first and foremost, what the heck I was looking at when I was reporting some of these items. I mean, at first look, you say, well, that's a rock. And then you say, well, no, here's where it's worked. It's not just a rock. I was hoping this would come out a little more clearly, but part of the experience was aircraft travel was not an option. I mean, I could travel there, but what you will see is it is not a paid position, but housing was provided and the fire door. I got to drive a government rig, and I had all the gas that I needed for Park Service business. They get kind of excited if you start driving it out to Walmart. Food was necessary while I was there. They don't have, Meals on Wheels. And so, yes, we needed to have, I had to have a personally owned vehicle. And just as a note, well, here's the problem is, the nearest convenience store was the Sahara Oasis and Ripoff at about 28 miles away. If I was hungry for a Big Mac, I could go to Nevada, about 50 miles away, but I'd rather go to Nipton and go to El Oasis Cafe, wonderful Mexican food. Real grocery store, probably 60 miles, but if you're going to go 60 miles for groceries, you might as well go all the way to Bullhead City in Arizona. And, of course, if you really needed to go to headquarters, paperwork, verifying that you know how to use a computer, that was 120 miles. So you needed a personal vehicle. And certain kind of aspects of driving, you have to realize it isn't just the number of miles, it's the quality of the miles. And when I say that, I've got, it says Las Vegas here. Well, that was about 99 miles, I think, and it was about an hour and 3/4. On the other hand, I could go to Fort Paiute, which is 40 miles away, and probably about 2 hours, because the way the road conditions were does get to be problematic. Now, I want to go over to the website briefly because here's what we had. Let's see if I can find it. Here's my website. And when I look here, these are current conditions at Mojave. And they tell you about all the roads. Which ones are open, which ones are closed, which ones you have to look for damage, that you have to have a high clearance vehicle. And certainly during the rainy season, during the monsoon season, it really is the case that there are some where you just say, it's closed. You're not going to go there. So that is part of the experience. And so I just want to very quickly go through because it was a multidisciplinary experience. I said, why not have fun on the way? So yes, I was able to get over to the largest wind chime in the world in Casey, Illinois. And I'm guessing you know that isn't the largest McDonald's. That's actually the St. Louis Arch. By the way, when I was at Casey, I could have found the largest golf tee there, but I skipped that one. Unlike National Park Service, there were private parks and attractions like fantastic caverns. And some of these were taken care of very well, but it's clearly the point of it is to make a profit. And they do try to preserve the features, but it isn't always very effective. Like in this one, fantastic caverns. Well, they were running gasoline-powered vehicles in the caverns. Not a good idea. I had a hard time finding something as I got to Oklahoma because what is it in Oklahoma? Well, I found a space museum, which is basically a rival to the Air and Space Museum in Washington. And of course, if you see here, I took my turn at the Cadillac Ranch, making sure to paint and make a teal emblem on there as advertisement for us. So, and I will say, aside from that, the 72-ounce steaks that you can have free if you can eat them all is the attraction of Amarillo. Painted desert, petrified forest. Of course, you have to stop there and petroglyphs right outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so, almost at Mojave, of course, another private enterprise, Meteor Crater in Arizona, kind of teachy, but it was fun. And you can't go through Arizona without at least taking a peek at the ground. So I got there, and I'm at Fenner, which means I'm almost at the preserve, and I don't know if you can see this here. It's the prices at this gasoline station. This is the last gas, last chance. 5 1/4 for regular. So a little different. Even, when they think that we were having low trees. And so I finally get to Mojave Preserve, and, well, remember that thing about the roads. They had the monsoons, and the road was closed, and nothing like knowing, not really where you're going, but being told, no, you can't go there. I did get there through the help of law enforcement. And just as a little background for the preserve, it's about 2,400 square miles. It's a little smaller than the state of Delaware. There are residents, several dozen regular inhabitants, and there are employees and volunteers working the preserve. And I won't, some of those numbers are kind of secret, but we can say roughly 50 people run the entire preserve. So you're probably looking at, in the hot months, maybe 100 people there. In the nice months, maybe 300. And some of them could be just on their way from 29 Palms to Vegas because they're on leave for the weekend. And of course, there's a number of different environments in there as well. There were safety implications had to deal with. First of all, because it was so scattered, we had worked very closely as a team. So the archaeological team was working together, but it was largely working with all of the other various teams in the field. And so we had in 2013, we had a death in Death Valley, not surprising, I guess. And that was because, well, there was a failure to communicate. And that means we had radio, we have to have radio, satellite phone, or a beacon, or a cell phone. And sometimes you have all of those and maybe 2 of them fail. And it's possible if you're in the wrong place, you just don't have communications. We had to check in, check out of our vehicles. And here were my primary projects. Orientation, they wanted me to know the park a little bit about stabilization. A lot of the mining structures were falling apart. They don't want to resurrect them and restore them. They really just want to keep them from falling apart so that other future generations can enjoy them. Fence surveys, going along fence lines looking for archaeological or any other artifacts that were important. Hydrology, water survey, unfortunately the government shutdown got in the way of that. And a boundary survey, and there's a reason why we want boundary survey, because you'll see one of our neighbors in one of these slides coming up right there. So I have hydrology. We try to find the best path. And of course, sometimes it looks like this is the best path, but it might not be passable at the time. And so we had to keep on track with road condition. And of course, when we went there, it was useful to know where we were and where the other sites we were interested would be. My archaeological folks were going with basically paper and pencil to find things. And so one of my early days, we found ourselves taking the 2-hour trip going over to Clark Mountain on the north side of the preserve. And then get there, we do our survey, got a wonderful survey done, come back and discover the next day we have to take the 2-hour trip to go back to Clark Mountain to find the site that was approximately 300 yards away from where we were the previous day. So we want to keep track of these sites, find the artifacts and record where they were. And for that, I had the use of this particular GIS device where we could map individual features. There's little squiggly black lines that indicate roads and red triangles, which are archaeological sites. And I can put overlays on there to show which were active sites that we wanted to go through. Very rugged, and we could add data in the field. So in my orientation, I was really introduced to most of the areas of the park, of the preserve. It is a preserve, not a park, because we can legally go in and shoot things there with proper licensure. So orientation, I got to see some of the petroglyphs. This was all in the hole in the wall area where I was staying. You see there's this wall and it has holes in it, and that's part of it. You might also know that these look kind of like cows, it's cattle, because this preserve allows for active mineral rights and active grazing rights. Unlike the Clive and Bundy Ranch, the 7IL Ranch, those cattle have a legal right to graze on that particular property. And of course, here's where I stayed, the fire dorm, along with approximately 4 to 8 firefighters at any given time. So all the comforts of home, as long as you didn't want to call home, because you had to stand on one of. This was great because I could stand on top of it and I could catch the signal off the interstate and sometimes be heard across the various cell phones. Other aspect, well, outside hole in the wall, we have an area which is all the dry lake areas, the Soda Lake, and right next to it, Mountain Spring. Yes, we do see the bighorn sheep. And here's another dry lake bottom. And if you see in the distance, yes, this is where, what is it called? Lord of the Rings was filmed. That is the Eye of Sauron. It is actually a solar farm. And one of the problems is right behind it is Clark Mountain. And, you know, if you're wanting to enjoy the national park system, you probably don't want the Eye of Sauron to look over at you. Orientation. Yes, I encountered the tortoises, and we had to record them because that's what you do when you see a tortoise. And we learned things about how to handle tortoises. First of all, you don't. Unfortunately, some tortoises have the ill sense to go onto the roads, and there you really need to approach them in a way from behind, I guess, and gently lift them up, move them over, deposit them off the road, hopefully orient them in a way that they don't get back on there. And we have the lava beds, cinder cones in the back, and a train station for the 1920s through 40s. Later on, I did have a cleanup project. This is something I mentioned with the trip of helping out there. And we did have, afterwards, of course, my colleagues, Tony Torres, and my boss on the right. And no, that isn't Coca-Cola there. But we dealt with those. We had the mine stabilization program. These would fall down in a few years. Bring helicopters in because you can't drive motorized vehicles in the park. So helicopters could bring items in. No motors in the park, in the wild wilderness areas. Samples of hydrology survey. Water tower, water tanks with graffiti, a canal over there, a horizontal well, and of course just a plain watering hole. And for fun, you get to go into crawl into caves and look at cave art, which is fun. I'm Tony looking particularly happy at that stuff. Oh, fence survey. You have more tortoises. You can see we're tracking them. And sadly, we did have a search and recovery. A gentleman who was hunting for about 40 years decided that he knew the place better than he really did, so he didn't bring any friend with him, and he was found at the bottom of this well here. One of the reasons why we do this kind of buddy system. Finally, I'm ending up with about the boundary survey where we finally left off. As you see, where's the road? Okay, that's my cup. No. But we have, yes, this is not a rock, that's a tool. I think the projectile point is obvious. But when we look here, this looked like a bunch of rocks, and it's actually a deflated park is what it amounts to. So we got, we had one other issue, bombs. That some people leave them behind, and so we have to engage with law enforcement to take care of those. And these are also hand tools for grinding grain. And we do have some wildlife there as well. And I did mention, but the other one there, you might have recognized that over here, one last piece. This stylish outfit on my legs, those look like something World War I vets would have. Well, that's because they had something there called a Mojave green. And you don't want to be bit by Mojave greens. My recommendation, go to the desert. It's beautiful, but stay safe. Stay in communication and go from there.